Hello and welcome to CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Sachin Prabhat, Vice President of Consulting at Tiger Analytics, a leading provider of data and AI services. There's a problem that's plaguing the enterprises today. Organizations have amassed significant amount of data, and yet many leaders cannot act with confidence. There's this chasm between data and insights. Today, we'll explore why this gap persists, how to fix it, and what does it look like in practice. We have with us Ujjwal Sehgal, Global Head of People Analytics at Mars, and Rachel Belino, HR Data Officer again at Mars, to talk about this very pertinent issue. Ujjwal, Rachel, welcome to the podcast. So, if you have to think of sort of a solution framework, Rachel, right? What are the key components of such a solution would be, right, to kind of realize this kind of vision, right, that you are painting, right? So, for example, some of the things that I have been hearing from some of our customers is that, hey, I think having a common data model could be a great starting point, right? But obviously, that's not enough. So, just wanted to hear, right, as you are solving this for your organization, what are some of these key solution levers that you are pulling, right? And what are your learnings?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I started this journey, I actually started very much with again, I hope this resonates with the audience, very much with the theory. So I had a conceptual data model and a
Hmm.
logical data model that I had built out for people data. And that's
Uh-huh.
one of the first things that I worked on in my role and in this function. And lo and behold, it actually wasn't that useful for us in the beginning because
Hmm.
we needed to deliver products that were solving very specific problems. Having that conceptual data model wasn't that meaningful. It is
Hmm.
now, however, and here's why. Because as we've gone along this journey and we went from very product specific data to then reusable data that was then common and being used across the board by all of the products in a consistent way.
Hmm.
Then we ran into the challenge of, while that's great, it's not unified in our data
Hmm.
platform in a way that really can allow us to transverse across
Hmm.
data as well as transverse it in time. So backwards, historically in a very easy way. So that's when I felt that a common data model became a critical part of what we needed. So it's great that you're hearing that, Shachin, from your other customers, because I do think that it's when it makes sense for you as an organization, it can really unlock
Hmm.
um, data discovery for your
Hmm.
data scientists, and then
Right.
also for those use cases that require you to cut across the data domains and or specific subdomains of the data and require you to bring that together to have a more holistic um, package of insights to offer your stakeholders, then that's where I think a common data model is a game changer.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think the point that you are saying, right, that you have to kind of go through that journey and kind of see that, okay, how do we kind of solve for it in a way that it can encompass across all the use cases. Now, one of the other challenge that I have seen is some of these things takes time, right? Like they're just saying that sometimes you have to walk slow to run faster, and at the same time the business doesn't stop, right? Business has to be given the value here and now. So love to hear your thoughts on how you guys have been able to balance those critical ask from the business to deliver the value now versus building some of this foundational stuff which takes time, right? Ujjwal, right, I'm pretty sure that you would have been in that space where your customers are asking that, that, hey, I want to have that use case now, right? And how do you deal with that?
No, that's a question we get asked almost every hour, if not every day, right? So that's a very common theme that we've seen in terms of how do I get access quickly to what we are looking for. I think the way we've approached this from a Mars standpoint is primarily keeping the user in the center and really trying to understand what is it from an empathy and understanding standpoint? What is the goal and the objective that they are, really trying to achieve? And how is this analysis or how is the output really going to help them answer that?
Hmm.
The reason why we always start with the user at the center, obviously, is because we want to understand what the business problem is, but then the intention also is how do we design the solution so that it's very easy for the user to clearly, navigate through the analysis, get the insights quicker, faster, and they don't have to really, figure out, oh, what drop down do I have to do, or what filter do I need to run for me to get the answer, right? So we always start with the end user in the center and design this. We also follow this principle that we've tried to embed into our operating model, which is build the front end
Hmm.
while the back end starts to catch up, right? And while we start looking at what data is needed, build that whole semantic or contextual layer of bringing that data in, we already have a clear design of what that front end or what the user is really looking for. So that just helps us expedite this whole process, because again, some lessons learned where we always started with, okay, tell me what you want, or here's the data I need, just do this analysis for me. And when we build those kind of products, we've really seen adoption rates are low because the users can't figure out how to navigate, what to do, how do they make the decisions. So some lessons learned from that, which is where then we've turned this around to say, all right, let's bring the user in the center first,
Hmm.
understand what they're looking for, and then build the solution really centered around that. So that's the approach that we've taken here at Mars.
Yeah, no, I think that point on the user centricity, while simple, but at times gets missed, right? I have seen it definitely
Yeah.
firsthand in many situations. I really like the point that you made about building the front end and let the back end catch up, right? Rachel, I'm pretty sure that mostly you end up with that back end catch up thing, right? Tell me, how do you deal with that?
I do. At time, I think the first time I heard Ujjwal say that is quite controversial to my ears. But it's absolutely spot on, and I'll tell you the benefits
Hmm.
of it. And the benefits of it is that a lot building a foundation requires investment,
Hmm. Yeah.
very significant investment for your organization, both in terms of money and time, and prioritization. And therefore, it's really important to demonstrate value tied to
Hmm.
that investment. And so, if you are focusing what you're doing on the foundation on
Hmm.
what has been proven successful
Hmm.
in terms of the pilots or the solutions that we've put forward, especially with our front end, then it's very easy, I would say, or straightforward to justify the investment that you're making in the foundation. And I think for any executive or leadership team, that's very important to show them that, because I know that many of us live in a world where our analytics functions as well as any other functions, but we all want to demonstrate the value that we're bringing. So I think that's one of the ways that's definitely a big advantage and a benefit of the back end catching up. I think
Hmm.
the other advantage I would say where the back end catches up is, frankly, it's kind of nice. It gives me time to be thoughtful and mindful and plan
Hmm.
and come up with what is that roadmap
Hmm.
that builds the foundation to be scalable in support of what is being driven by our stakeholders and our users in that front end. So, rather than, putting the cart before the horse, I'm
Hmm.
able to say, okay, this is what we've seen. This is what's happening. These are the priorities of the business coming through and showing up in our products. Therefore, this is the roadmap that we can do to scale and support that.
Got it. Got it. No, very, very helpful. And again, I think this definitely is something that I'm pretty sure our listeners will also kind of try to practice and take it as a takeaway from this conversation. Let's talk about agents now, right? That's all the buzz right now. And while there has been a lot of excitement about bringing the agentic ecosystem into the play and doing a lot with the external side of the equation, what I mean by that is like maybe optimizing your marketing function, right? Or how you engage with your end consumers and things like that. But there is also a huge space ready and ripe to be disrupted, which is that internal ecosystem, right? Just the way we do things, the way we do our engineering, the way we do kind of manage our data. Love to hear how you guys are leveraging some of these newer constructs, right? Again, in the interest of serving that original goal of bridging the gap between the data and the insight. Rachel, maybe I'll start with you and then I'll come to Ujjwal next.
The buzzwords are all out there. We're all familiar with it. My favorite is the agentic AI framework.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why it's my favorite, because I hate black boxes, I hate hype words, and I love digging into it and figuring out what's in that black box.
Mm-hmm.
So I found out what's in that black box behind agentic AI framework. And I think that's really important is anytime you're presented with the hype or the buzzwords, I think what we owe ourselves as data professionals is to get behind that and really understand it. So break it down into the different components and educate ourselves and make sure that we know everything about it. And with the right partners that are partnering with you, you can do that. I think the important pieces that we learned in the past year to really double down and focus on in terms of our education and our capability build, and also, turning that black box into something that I know every single component and have and am able to establish some visibility into. Is there's several pieces. One is the context layer. So it became extremely important last year when we were enabling AI for BI, so conversational AI, to understand what is the role of the context layer and how important context is in everything. And one of the design principles that I made sure, which we've always done along our journey here in this function, is what do we need to set up in order to make that happen. So in this case, the context layer, what does that look like? And so that's where it's really important, I think, to have a technical blueprint. So make sure from an architecture standpoint, you have the very detailed technical blueprint that can explain that to you, and you can also explain it to others. And then that way, again, you don't have this black box. So the context layer was a big piece. The second is the prompt engineering. So everybody talks about it, but it's really important to know what's going on in that prompt. So to have that full visibility, and I think you have to focus in on the mechanisms to show you that and make that visible all the time. And do you have the roles and capabilities within your team? Do you have the right technical skills as well as functional skills to understand what's going into the prompt? Are you able to validate that what is then returned from that prompt is actually in line with what you're expecting? So I think that's the second component. And then the third is getting back to the agentic AI framework. And I'll tie it back to what was covered, I think, earlier in the podcast about the personas. It became very clear to me that in order to get the right responses, or I would say the suitable responses or the appropriate responses to the questions that we were asking of the conversational AI, is you really need to first start off with the persona. Who is the persona that is asking the question? And then that way, the agentic AI framework that you have with the orchestrator and the different agents that are brought into play with that orchestrator, that it's able to focus in on the persona and deliver the appropriate responses. Because there's a path that has to be followed. But in order to follow the path, we have to say, okay, it's the path for this persona or that persona. So those, I think, are the three things that I learned last year that are really important aspects of this. And so that has to be set up to be scalable, repeatable, dependable in order to have an AI-ready data platform.
No, wonderful, wonderful. In fact, this piece around persona really resonated with me because it dovetails into what Ujjwal was saying earlier, that you're not putting that end user into the center and designing everything around that, right? Ujjwal, anything to add from your side on how you guys are leveraging agents and the whole agentic paradigm, right, to
Yeah,
transform data story?
absolutely. So, you heard Rachel speak more about the fundamentals and the workflow designs, that really happen at the back end, right? But to an end user, what the end user is really looking for is the AI elevator. They don't, a lot of the end users really don't understand the fundamentals of, getting the right data in, having the right workflow, etc., right? But as an end user, I think what users need to also really understand is the AI truly able to give me or shine light on questions that I myself as a user haven't thought of? Because many times, when we talk about personas also, many times, it's like everybody is so, has their blinders on, if I may use that as an example to say, if I'm responsible for talent acquisition, as an example, I'm only going to think about talent acquisition. But the beauty of bringing in, the common data model and the whole agentic framework is now saying, let's not just look at talent acquisition, because talent acquisition is just one part of it. But can the orchestrator actually give me leading or lagging indicators that might be relevant for me as a persona, but I'm probably not even asking that question because I'm only looking at talent acquisition as an example. But a classic example could be turnover has direct implications on talent acquisition. But if you really look at a talent acquisition manager, they never ask questions around turnover, right? They're all worried about, all right, how many new recs are coming in? What is my time to hire? How quickly can I actually, fulfill those requirements? But if I get these leading indicators, and I'm calling turnover as a leading indicator because turnover leads to a demand in acquisition. So if I already know who's going to leave, or what my turnover is going to look like, I can actually start prepping my TA team to say, all right, these are the roles that I would want to fill in. And really, that's where the whole AI solutions really need to come to life through the agentic framework, by saying, don't look at it purely based on the blinders on of looking at only what's relevant for you, but there could be other aspects that are having an influence on what's relevant for you as well. And I think that's really what we are trying to bring through life here, which is to look at the entire ecosystem. Again, not just what's relevant for one persona, but then what can influence that persona as well. And that's where the whole power and the beauty of AI really comes to life.
That's actually very, very profound, Ujjwal, right? Because I think as you were speaking, I was just thinking through that it's not about having a point in time insight, right? But looking at the persona, it's in entirety and on its adjacencies, right? And
Yeah.
then through that, right, trying to find the insights at the intersections, if you will, right?
Correct. Yep.
Uh, I think that's actually very, very profound, because I don't think people always look at the data and the insights that way, right? And maybe using some of these newer construct, right, they can actually stitch that together, and that could be very, very powerful.
Exactly. Which is again user led, bringing the user in the center, and in some ways forcing them, because it can be a very uncomfortable conversation for some of those users, because you're kind of asking them to think through what and how and all of that, and that can be a little bit intimidating for them, because they've never been in those kind of situations in the past, right? So I think that's where the whole paradigm is shifting as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. A small plug from Tiger Analytics here, because we are talking so much about the personas, and as our audience is also hearing, right, the personas are really at the center of realizing this kind of solves. We do have a solution called Zero Shot Profiler. The idea of this Zero Shot Profiler is that for any persona within the organization, right, it can very quickly create a full profile of what are the kind of questions that persona need to ask, what are the kind of decisions that the persona needs to make, what are the kind of data element that that persona needs to look at, right? What are the kind of insight that they need to kind of review on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, right? This is being achieved through a curation of our understanding of the marketplace and designing several solutions over time. If any of our listeners are interested in knowing more about that, they can always reach out to Tiger Analytics, and we'll be happy to kind of do a demo. Well, this was great talking to both you, Ujjwal and Rachel. Thanks for your time, and we're looking forward to kind of collaborate further.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone.